We're 7 or 8 games out of the playoffs, so we have a chance. We are learning. We are coming together. We are learning how to play with each other.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. And today's Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is also brought to you by SeatGeek. Download the mobile app for the easiest way to buy tickets and use the promo code LOFANTASY to get yourself a $20 rebate on your first purchase. Today's show is also brought to you by a Patreon sponsor, and that is Dean Vasic. Dean, thank you for being a supporter of the show. Thank you for being a patron of the show, and Dean is one of the best supporters we've had of the show over the few years, and Dean's actually been on a few episodes as well. So shout out to you, Dean, and you are today's sponsor. My name is Josh Lloyd. As always, you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball. We've got lots of stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about all the 9 games from Sunday. We're going to preview the week ahead. We're going to look at a very small 3-game Tuesday in the NBA. And I've got a little bit of a rant to get to as well. So
let's get to it.
Let's start off with a rant, actually, because I'm not the biggest fan of Yahoo as a fantasy site. And part of it, I guess, is from that not being the first site that I played on, from it being ESPN. And the majority of people I see have complaints with ESPN. There's 2 things. There's position eligibilities, which I understand were pretty poor this year. And the other thing is I don't like how it looks. That has zero impact to me whatsoever. Yahoo is a site that pisses me off. All right, I think their position eligibilities are weird as well. I think they're way too liberal with what they do with positions. But something happened to me this week in my league that I was not aware of that happens in Yahoo, and I find it to be, honestly, one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in any sort of fantasy sports. Now, plenty of you that play on Yahoo will know about this and say, of course, Josh, how don't you know this? Well, I don't play on Yahoo normally. Fantrax, of course, is the place that I play on. I've got some leagues on ESPN. I'm in a couple on Yahoo that really just started this season. So I've never really played on Yahoo. But the fact that if I add a player off waivers, which I did in the league, and we have like waiver processing, like bidding twice a week, I believe. So I did the claim like on Wednesday, maybe. It went through on Friday. Cool, I won it. And it was a player, the player I got is Cameron Payne. All right, so I wasn't going to use him because he was there. It's a deep league, it's a 16-team league. Let's see how he goes these first games. And then I wasn't in a rush to get him into my active lineup. So I won the bid, fine. Yahoo resets my lineups. They were all set. I set them at the start of the week. Nothing had changed. And then today they benched all my players. I cannot think of a stupider, more ridiculous system in the world. I have said it. The guy that I dropped, right, you take him out of his active spot and you can put the new guy on the bench. Totally fine with that. That's what common sense would dictate. Not I make a change and then everyone in my active lineup gets put on the bench. I had 8 guys move out of my active lineup for today onto the bench because of this ridiculous rule. I never even thought this would be the case because it defies all sorts of logic. If anyone that works for Yahoo is listening to this, fix this shit because it is ludicrous, is ridiculous, and it will prevent me from playing Yahoo leagues. I know about it now, but it is still ridiculous. I made the move. I knew Campaign would go on my bench. I didn't have to go and set my lineup. But apparently I did because every little bit of work that I did before that gets reset by one move. Cannot think of a stupider system. Get your shit together and get it fixed because that is the worst. That is the dumbest thing I've heard of in fantasy sports. Absolutely ludicrous. Okay, let's talk weekly games. A weird week, as I mentioned. Just the 3 games to kick things off on Monday with the college football playoff championship game coming up on Monday, so we don't have many games on to clash with that. But then, a pretty decent rest of the week. 9 games Tuesday. 6 games Wednesday, 6 games Thursday, 9 games Friday, 5 games Saturday, and rounding it out with 7 games Sunday. So a fairly even spread, no days with over 10 games. The only days that you might have an issue with starting or sitting blokes is going to be Tuesday or Friday. And normally I look at it and say 8 games, you're fine. 9 games, you might be in trouble. But on most of those days, I've gone through and had a look at all my leagues. I think there was, in one of my 15 leagues that I'm in, on the Friday in one league, I had to sit a guy on the bench in a standard 10-3 split. Like, I'm in other leagues where I've got 5 actives and 8 bench guys. Of course, I'm going to have to sit guys on those days. But in your standard 10-3 splits, there was only one day in one league across all those leagues where I had to sit people. So much like last week, it should be fairly open slather in terms of streaming. Let's talk weekly leagues first, though, and we'll talk about who's got the most games. And it is a weird week again because we've got a game over in England. So we only have the Denver Nuggets and the Indiana Pacers playing one game this week. So in a weekly lineup, you can't play any of them. Jokic, Paul George, can't play them with one game. It just doesn't work. Can't play any Nuggets, can't play any Pacers in weekly locks. Your Chicago Bulls, they got 5 games. So you've got, look at adding guys. Dougie McDermott, Nick Mirotic. Man, take a flyer on Chris Felicio, who is really trending up at the moment. And Ricky Sanders, who you probably follow on Twitter. If you don't, go and follow Ricky. He had some great stats about Felicio, about him comparing him to Robin Lopez. I did talk about this a little bit yesterday about how Lopez is on the way down and Felicio is on the way up, and they should continue to play that lineup more. But Ricky had some great numbers on it, and Felicio is basically equal or superior to Lopez in all of those numbers. So adding Felicio for 5 games might be worth a look. Michael Carter-Williams, Jaren Grant, McDermott, Mirotic, Felicio. Yeah, lots of guys that might be around. Go and grab them. With 5 games, it can be really interesting. The majority of teams play 3 games this week. So 5 games is a huge advantage. The 4-game crew consists of Brooklyn, Detroit, Houston, the Lakers, the Timberwolves, the Knicks, and the Thunder. So we've only got 7 teams playing 4 games. So that's a really low amount to have only 8 teams playing at least 4 games. Normally you get 12, 13, 14 teams. Very, very low amount this week. 3 games is the majority. Atlanta, Boston, Cleveland, Dallas, Memphis, Milwaukee, New Orleans, Orlando, Philadelphia, Portland, Sacramento, San Antonio, Toronto, Utah, and Washington. And then there's 5 teams that play 2 games. The Hornets, the Warriors, the Clippers, the Heat, and the Suns. And that makes it difficult. Durant with 2 games is great. Chris Paul with 2 games is great. The other guys, Kemba, Eric Bledsoe, DeAndre Jordan, Hassan Whiteside, Draymond Green, 2 games, is it going to cut it? The good thing about it this week is you're comparing them mainly to 3-game teams rather than 4-game teams because majority have got 3, so you might be able to use them. Steph Curry is another guy that you use, obviously, as well. So it's not a case of every 2-game player is an absolute write-off. You would use Steph, you would use KD, you would probably use Bledsoe, you would potentially use a guy like Dragic, probably not. You would use Kemba. You would use Chris Paul, as I touched on already. But the other guy, Draymond, Clay, you could probably use those guys. It really always just depends on how the rest of your roster shakes out. But quite a weird situation. Now the Bulls have the 5 games this week. Well, let's look at the 4-game teams. The Rockets have the best schedule. They take on Hornets, Timberwolves, Grizzlies, and Nets. The Nets, the Knicks, and the Pistons also have a fairly good schedule out of the 4-gamers. If you look at the Lakers, they've got the worst 4-game schedule. They have Portland, which is a good matchup, but then the Spurs, the Clippers, and the Pistons is a pretty shit last 3 games of the week. With the 3-game teams, that's where you're going to have to make most of your decisions. Atlanta has the best. They take on Brooklyn, Boston, and Milwaukee. Toronto, the Spurs, and the Pelicans are all fairly good as well. And on the downside of things, Orlando's got a terrible one. The Clippers, the Trailblazers, and the Jazz. And the Bucks have the Spurs, the Heat, and the Hawks. So they're probably the worst of those groups. So that's where a majority of your decisions are going to come in that 3-game group. And your Atlanta, Toronto, San Antonio is better than Orlando, Milwaukee, Sacramento. But we've got all this stuff covered over on Basketball Monitor. It will set up to your league settings, tell you what players are worth looking at, how the schedule shakes out, how that schedule impacts their weekly projections, which we do in the weekly projections section. As long as you tick on the apply BBM factors, that'll take all that into consideration when we look at it. and look at those projections for the week. So it is something that is obviously a benefit of being a member over at Basketball Monster. If you look at daily leagues, as I mentioned, you could potentially stream every single day. But if we just go with my general blanket rule of 8 games or under is streamable, what we want to look at then is Monday, you can get anyone in with only the 3 games, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, Sunday. So that means we're looking at Wednesday, Thursday back-to-backs is a real area to target, and Saturday, Sunday back-to-backs. Not many teams have got that combination of games. In fact, Wednesday, Thursday, there's 1 team, and that's the New York Knicks. Saturday, Sunday, there's 2. It's the Bulls and the Lakers. So not really much to attack there. Of course, the Bulls we already talked about as being a 5-game week, and 4 of those 5 games come on light schedule day, so that's fantastic. The Knicks also have a great start to the week. They play Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, so they play 3 games in the first 4 days on light schedule days. So you can get these Knicks guys in. So Noah, Brandon Jennings even, Mindaugas Kuzminskas in a slightly deeper sort of format. Have a look at those guys, and they might be able to really assist you in getting some extra numbers for this week. If we look at teams that have that Thursday, Saturday, which is a pseudo back-to-back, you've got the Bulls, the Lakers, the Pelicans, the Spurs and the Suns. So there's some value to be got from guys there, whether you look at a player like Donatas Motiejunas from the Pelicans, Etuan Moore, Langston Galloway, guys like that on the Lakers. Tim Mozgov played another 30 minutes today. He might be another player to have a look at in that sort of an area. And the Bulls guys, as I already talked about as well. But yeah, look, you can probably stream every single day, but that's the most ideal way of covering it at the moment, I guess, is probably what I'm trying to get across there. All right, let's talk about now today's sponsor, and that is, of course, SeatGeek. The NBA, we're kicking off. It's NBA, yes, it's NFL playoffs, I know that, but not everyone in the NFL has a team that's left in the playoffs, so maybe your interest is waning. This is what they always say about the NBA. The NBA kicks off after Christmas. So it might start getting harder to get tickets, but SeatGeek's going to have you covered. If you want to get the tickets to see the NBA, SeatGeek's the easiest. It's the smartest way to find the tickets for the games that you want to see up close and in person. It's the best if you can get to these games and see these incredible athletes in person. And no matter what seat you want, SeatGeek's going to have you covered. You get the app on your phone, and it's the easiest way that you can use to shop for tickets. It doesn't get any easier. Open it, tap the screen a couple of times, search what you want. There it is. Buy your tickets. Bang, it's done. SeatGeek always gives you the best deal every ticket because their price compares across many different sites, all the different resale ticket sites, and shows you the different prices and compares them. It shows it on the screen. Green ticket, that's good value for you. Red ticket, probably not as great value. You might want to look in a different direction. It helps you get the most bang for your buck, and you can see this grading with that value on the screen. It also shows you where the seats are, of course, in the stadium. And every ticket that you buy on SeatGeek is backed by their 100% guarantee. The best thing, though, is that all listeners of this podcast get a $20 rebate off their first SeatGeek purchase. To get your $20 rebate, it's easy. Download the SeatGeek app. Step 1. Easy. You guys know how to do it. Go to the settings tab and click add a promo code. The promo code is LOFANTASY, which is LOFANTASY. Enter that promo code, and SeatGeek will send you a $20 rebate after you've made your first ticket purchase. Download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code LOFANTASY today. All right, let's talk monstrous line of the night. Jimmy Harden. He's been good. There's not much more I need to say about that. He's been good. Another triple-double, but not a pissy triple-double. This is a 40-point triple-double. 40 points, 10 rebounds, 11 assists, and he doesn't stop there because he gets 2 steals. He has 2 blocks. He has 4 triples. He goes 10 of 10 from the line and he's 50% from the field. That is a ludicrously good line. He is your number 1 player this season. He is averaging 28, 8, and 12, 3 triples, 1.5 steals, and not actually a punt field goal percentage guy at 44% on the year. And of course, he's fantastic in the free throws. And he was a little bit down in the free throws, or he has been for the year. But over the last 2 weeks, we're talking 88% on 12 attempts, which is the number 1 contribution in that category over that time. So over the course of the year, Jim Butler, Isaiah Thomas, Kawhi Leonard, and a few others are ahead of him. But over the last 2 weeks, he's getting back to usual Jim Harden levels, the higher volume and the higher percentage. Not that it's a big difference, but 10 free throws to 12 free throws, which is where his seasonal to last 2 weeks difference is. It makes a huge, huge chunk of difference. Plus, he's shooting an extra 3% better from the line in the last 2 weeks as well, and that's creating an impact that's almost double what his seasonal impact is in that category. Not much more to talk about, Jim. To me, he is the front runner for MVP. I don't know if he'll get there. I hope so. The bet I put on in the off-season hopes he does as well. When I got him at 20-1, which I was pretty happy with, I hope he ends up being I think he will be the MVP. He is just doing so. Look, the Rockets started off so slowly today against Toronto and looked poor, and he just monstered them. Really, in the end, he just does everything that needs to be done for this team, and he has been quite honestly ridiculous. And there is no way that he does not get first team All NBA really, or should be starting in the All-Star game. Has been absolutely ridiculous so far this season. The waiver wire line of the night, DeMarre Carroll. Big night from DeMarre. 26 points, 6 triples, 8 rebounds, a steal, and did it efficiently. 7 of 12 from the field and 6 of 6 from the line. And the important thing here with Carroll, it was a back-to-back. He played 41 minutes Saturday and then played 34 minutes today. So it's fair to say that the minutes restrictions are over, but it's been weird because, okay, if we look back at his last 6 games, right, the first 3 games he played 19 minutes, 17 minutes, 19 minutes, and then all of a sudden Dwayne Casey's just like screwed up the bit of paper and gone, oh, fuck it, don't worry about it, let's go. 39, 41, 34. A weird way to ease off a restriction. No, we'll just play the 18, play the 20 minutes. Nah, man, let's go 40. Don't worry about it. Just don't worry. Who cares? If your knee falls off, we're good. Just a weird ramping up of minutes. Doesn't mean he's been good. And he was good today. Absolutely, he was good today. Came on career high 3-pointers, came on 7 of 12 shooting. The 2 previous games where he played 41 and 39 minutes, he combined for 17 points in those games. So it's not just a case of, oh, DeMarre's back, played 34 minutes. Yep, he's back. He's 2014-15 DeMarre Carroll. Because, again, the 2 previous games he played monster minutes and was dreadful. But he is worth having a look at in 12-team leagues if you've got some disposable riffraff at the end of your bench. He's a top 80 player over the last week, a top 110 guy over the last 2 weeks. It all depends who I would drop, but I would have a look at it and see if I can make that move and hope that it sticks. But my faith in it is not high, but I feel much better about the fact that the minutes are well up there now. They're not just hovering at the 26 or 27 mark. They're pushing right up over 30 and putting in some pretty big performances. So that's encouraging for DeMarre Carroll moving forward. The young gun of the night, this guy's flying at the moment. D'Angelo Russell of the Los Angeles Lakers. Russell went 17, 8, and 7. He had 2 triples. He had 3 steals. He blocked a shot. He went 7 of 10 from the field and 1 of 2 from the free throw line after somewhat of a slow start. People were a little bit down on Russell, but he is cranking it up in a big way. He's the 55th ranked player over the last 2 weeks in just 30 minutes a night, and those minutes are going up. He's averaging 17.5 points, almost 2.5 threes, 4.5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 1.7 steals. And that value at number 55 is coming on under 42% shooting. So you talk punt field goal percentage, he's a top 40 type of player. And he's got room to grow. He's got room to get better from here. He probably still is more of a punt guy, but I can totally see him being a top 50 guy when all is said and done. And he could very comfortably be a top 40 player in the 2017 portion of this season because, as we saw early on in the year, Luke Walton is just limiting the minutes. But he's like more serious now. He's like, all right, we know what's up. Let's play our good players 33 minutes and forget about the rest. Now, I could have said you could have done that mid-November. I don't know why we needed 2 months of mucking around and trying to work out everything. But that seems to be the coaching philosophy. Let's just experiment for 2 months and then let's start to crank things up and get things serious with the rotation. So Russell really starting to come together now and putting up some very impressive lines. And I think he's going to be I do think he's going to be a top 50 player when all is said and done. I thought this guy was starting to crank it up. He is the dud of the night. I thought he was really getting it going. But Aaron Gordon just lets us down yet again. 2 points for Gordo on 0 of 5 shooting. He had 6 rebounds. He had an assist. He had the 0 triple one. or the 000, 0-3, 0 steals, 0 blocks, and went 2 of 4 from the line. Was not a good Aaron Gordon night, and he was just really starting to get it together. I was saying, yeah, go and grab him. If he's available, add him. And it's on the way up. The minutes are up. Everything's coming together. And then he throws in this little turd. Now, he is still just outside the top 100 over the last 2 weeks. He's averaging 14.5 points. So even with this bad game included, he's been putting up some impressive lines, and he had 4 straight double-digit scoring nights before this one. Those 4 double-digit scoring nights were bookended by 2-point nights, so that shows the downside of Gordon. But he went 2-4-2, right, which was on the 28th of December, and then he had 13-6, 22-6-6, 15-10, 18-6-7. So a really strong stretch of games. And then 2-6 again. So just some inconsistency, and then it doesn't get help that when he has an inconsistent night, he gets benched and Jeff Green plays above him, which really should never happen in any sort of situation ever. But Aaron Gordon continues to confound us, continues to be frustrating. But I do just think, just hold tight, because again, the previous 4 games to this were very, very impressive from Big Azza. Let's move into the games now. Let's talk about them in a little bit more detail. The first one of those is the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets. It was the early game. Bob Cove. Yeah, he's there's no way he should be on the waiver wires. I'm sorry. 15-11, 1-3, 1 assist, 5 steals and a block. I understand he hurts your field goal percentage, but if you drafted Robert Covington without knowing that's your own fault. He had to be dealt with in that position. He's been a sub 40% shooter for every year in his career. And yeah, he's had some really horrible nights this season, but his steal numbers, his block numbers, his rebound numbers have been very good, and the field goal percentage is improving. Really big night from Covington. I don't see his minutes really changing too much. At 37 is a big load. He's probably not going to get that sort of run every night, but he's so key to what they do because he provides defense and nobody else does. And he can shoot, although that is debatable on some nights, but in general, he can hit threes, and this team needs that. I don't see his minutes going anywhere when Ben Simmons arrives, whenever that may be. They also made another change to their starting lineup. They kept TJ McConnell as the starting point guard, and he played 36 minutes. This is something I've been looking at and talking about and saying, I reckon they may keep him. I'm not sure what they do, but they might just leave it as an even split, or they might keep him starting. Well, it was no even split. It was 12 minutes to Spanish Chocolate and 36 to McConnell, who went 4, 8, and 6 with 2 steals. I'm not sure Brett Brown would love the fact that TJ McConnell went 2 of 11 from the field, but he still did those other numbers, and he is absolutely worth a look at in 12-team leagues. Yes, when Ben Simmons comes back, McConnell's going to be useless. So I guess it would depend on who you drop as to whether that's going to be useful, but that might be 3 weeks away. It might be 5 weeks away. We don't really know. All we knew is that we'd look at Simmons at some point in this month, but we've had no further clarification on that, unfortunately. The Sixers also changed their starting shooting guard. Gerald Henderson went to the bench. He played 21 minutes and had 7 points, and Source Castillo started. Nick Stauskas played 31 minutes, and surprisingly, he wasn't terrible. Nearly every other time he started this season, that's a generalization, but nearly every other time he started, he has been terrible. But he had 15 and 5, he hit 3 triples, he had a block, he had 2 assists. If he can maintain a 30-minute role, then your 14 to 16 team leaguers will want to pay some attention to Stauskas. He's not going to be a 12-teamer just yet. Joel Embiid battled some foul trouble, but he still produces 20 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, and 2 blocks. And for the second consecutive game, Jahlil Okafor out of the rotation. Get rid of him. Forget about it. He was a borderline guy anyway, and this should be all you need to say, see you later, Jahlil Okafor. He is toast. Nerlens Noel played the 24 minutes behind Embiid. They didn't share the court at all. 8, 4, and 3 for Noel with 3 steals. So he doesn't need big minutes to be useful. Give him 26 or 24 minutes and he could easily be a top 60 or top 70 type of player. In 24 minutes, and again, this was a foul trouble-induced 24 minutes. I think we probably should expect more along the lines of 20 or 21 for Noel on most nights. But that can have use in 12-team leagues. And you get the feeling that the Sixers might be leaning towards trying to keep him rather than Okafor, and that's going to limit what Noel can do. He's definitely someone you can look to own, no problem with that whatsoever, but much like we talked about with McConnell, who you're dropping to grab him, because that will be a big factor in that Ersan Ilyasova had the 26 minutes, 14 and 7, wasn't efficient. He went 5 of 16, while Dario Saric played 30 and went 18 and 5 with 3 triples. He's been much better over the last 4 to 6 weeks and has climbed himself up probably into 16-team league consideration. For the Nets, Brookie Lopez had 26, hit 3 triples, had a steal and a block, only the 2 boards, but really good percentages from Lopez. And the Nets made another change to their starting point guard. They pushed, after one game, they pushed Spencer Dinwiddie back to the bench. And of course, then they played him more minutes. So what they did in the last 3 games, Whitehead starting, Dinwiddie on the bench. In that game, Dinwiddie played more minutes. All right, let's make the change. Dinwiddie to start. And in that second game, Whitehead played more minutes off the bench. All right, let's move Whitehead back to start. In the third game, Whitehead started, Dinwiddie played more off the bench. So as it is, basically the starting point guard just gets the less minutes. Because why bother with logic? Dinwiddie had 9, 3 and 3 with 2 blocks. He's a better player than Whitehead and he's a better fantasy contributor. Neither of them are 12-team league guys. Trev Booker limited to just the 18 minutes. Foul trouble was a concern there. 4, 4 and 3 with a steal and a block. While Shawnee Kilpatrick, I don't think there's much need to really hold him in standards anymore. 10, 3 and 3 in 25 minutes. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson played 23, got his 2 steals, had 7 points, but he's not in that conversation yet. And Karis LeVert, the important thing there is he played 21. Not much else happening, 6, 3 and 2, but he played 21 minutes, and you know how much I like him, and you know how excited I am to see those minutes ramp up to a 27, 28 a night. I think we might be waiting until February for that to happen, and he's not a real strong 12-team hold at this point, but he is going to be a good player. I'm fairly convinced of that. The Washington Wizards and the Milwaukee Bucks. Otto Porter, not efficient Otto Porter, but I love that Otto Porter's made his season on efficiency, but even on a night where it doesn't fall, where he goes 3 of 8, he puts something else in. 13, 7 and 7. 3 triples, 1 steal, 2 blocks, and a perfect 4 of 4 from the line. And he, to me, has been probably the biggest surprise. Well, I'd have to look at everyone maybe, but he's been close to the biggest surprise of the season. I liked Otto Porter when he was drafted. I was ready for him to have a breakout season in his second season once Trevor Ariza left, and then they brought in Paul Pierce, and Porter struggled. And then last season, I was hoping for something, and he started out all right and really faded down the stretch. In January, he was horrible. And this season, he just took it up a notch. He's shooting like 7-8% better from the field, from the line, from 3, and doing a whole bunch of stuff. And the 7 assists is a real surprise here for Otto. He has been fantastic. Markieff Morris played 38 minutes, 20 and 10, 3 steals. I do think that Markieff should be owned in every league. Brad Beal had 26 points. Johnny Wall went 16, 3 and 7. And Marcin Gortat played 37. Took 5 shots in 37 minutes. That's not easy to do. 7 points with 12 rebounds, while Kelly Oubre chimed in with 17 and 5 in 25 bench minutes. They've sort of rejiggered the bench rotation at the moment, with Oubre getting more minutes, Marcus Thornton out of the rotation, and Sheldon McClellan in his place. And McClellan has been playing well. 12 minutes for McClellan, 8 and 3, 2 steals. And his steal numbers per 36 over the last couple of weeks have been okay, almost at 2 steals a game. He's shooting not bad for a rookie. He's scoring at a decent rate. In your 20-team leagues, you might want to have a look at McClellan, because I think he's going to maintain a fairly solid rotational role here for the rest of the season. For the Bucks, Matty Dellavedova was back, but Yanni was out. So it was going to be hard for them to win without Yanni, and they didn't. They lost 107 to 101. But what I loved was Brogdon playing 36 minutes. He had 22 points, he had 5 assists, 3 steals, a block, and 2 triples. By now, he's owned in your league, I'm sure. If he is not, please do it. He has to be owned in leagues. As for Daly, he played 18 minutes and went 2, 2 and 4. Now, there's no guarantee that Brogdon is going to continue to play 35 a night, but I feel pretty good about it. No, not 35, but I feel pretty good that he's going to remain in a high minute role. Without Yanni, Jabari Parker did a pretty good Yanni impression, to be honest. 28, 8 and 7, 3 triples, 2 steals and a block, and he has been a huge improver this year as well. While it does now finally appear that Jason Kidd has decided, as I said, it takes these coaches 2 months to see shit that is plainly obvious to everybody, that Greg Monroe is their best center. For those of you who don't listen every day, I'll say it again. Greg Monroe has deficiencies. Greg Monroe has defensive problems. Greg Monroe is also a much better defender than the other centers on this team. John Henson is a horrible defender. He's a horrible offensive player. He's a horrible player. Miles Plumlee is terrible. Greg Monroe is better than them in every facet of the game. except for shot blocking for Henson. I'll give him that. Doesn't make him a good defender. He is a good shot blocker, not a good defender. But Munro has now got a consistent role. It's 28 to 30 minutes, and he's over the year, he's like the 80th ranked player in 21 minutes. You could really be looking at a guy that's a top 50, top 40 guy in these big minutes, and he was great here. 12 and 12 with 3 assists, 4 steals, and a block. And in the preseason, I wasn't high on Munro. I had him 80th or 90th because everything coming from Kidd was, we just won't play this guy. We're not going to play him big minutes. We're going to limit him in the small role, and we saw that for 2 months. And not that I didn't think that Munro could do it, it's just that I didn't think that Kidd would recognise it, or Kidd was too stubborn. But credit to Jason Kidd, it did take him 2 months, maybe it took him 2 years to realise that Munro is the best player or the best centre out of this group, and that despite his deficiencies, he actually provides more than the alternatives. Mirza Teletovic started in place of Yanni, wasn't great, 5 and 4 in 31 minutes, while Michael Beasley chipped in with 18 points in 16 minutes before succumbing to a shin injury. As for Henson, he did start, he played 15 minutes and had 2 points. I don't need to tell you that you don't need to own John Henson anymore. Miami and the Los Angeles Clippers, Hassan Whiteside was back. He played 31 minutes, 15 and 13 with 2 blocks. There's so much talk about Hassan Whiteside around on fantasy basketball forums and sites about Whiteside and about how disappointing he's been and about trading him away. Yeah, look, you know what? His blocks have dropped. He's scoring a lot more. He's getting his rebounds. His free throws have dropped, definitely. And he's been a mild disappointment. But you shouldn't be looking to trade him away based on the fact that he's going to be, and using that dreaded word, which I despise, it's probably second to me behind showcase, is the phrase shutdown. Because it's a lie. It's bullshit. Actually, or maybe it's up there with contract year, which is another lie. Shutdown. Players don't get shut down when they're healthy. With the exception, this is the only time I've ever seen it. It did happen last year for the final 5 games of last season. Brook Lopez and Thad Young were just said, we're just going to preserve you for the rest of the year. You're not playing. Right? That is the only time I have ever seen that happen. Ever. And by then, your fantasy league is over. And if your fantasy league is not over, change your fantasy league. It should be over by the time April starts. That is the ideal to finish it, which I think is the 27th of March this year. Your fantasy league should be over by the time we hit those last 5 games of the season. So, yeah, there's all this, I trade Whiteside now because he could get shut down. What you want to say is he could get injured, the same as every other player in the entire NBA. Now, the Heat would have limited incentive to rush him back from an injury. They wouldn't want to play him through something where he's at 90% instead of 100%. But they're not just going to say to him in January, in February, Hassan, the All-Star break's here. It's a nice little break for you. Why don't you just piss off and we'll see you back in October? It just doesn't happen. It's just not going to happen. Imagine your boss at work just said that. You're doing well there at work and you're one of the more important people at work, and they just say, "Oh, look, we won franchise of the month for this month." This is a horrible analogy, but I'm just going to continue with it. But the next awards aren't till October. Why don't you just take the rest of the time off? We don't want to burn you out in this time frame, like when we're not in contention for an award. Why don't you just take the rest of the time off? Just in case you lose your grip, just in case you have a workplace accident. It doesn't happen. And not for long stretches of time. Yes, Hassan Whiteside probably won't play the last 3 games of the year. Neither will LeBron, neither will Kyrie, neither will anybody. And that's why it's shit to play that time of year. Players don't get... Look, if I'm wrong about this, I honestly want to know what other examples there are of players in January, in February, just saying, we're done. Because I may have missed them. I will fully acknowledge that Brook Lopez and Thad Young missed the last 5 games without being injured, but I would love to know one other player. And there very well could have happened, and I have erased it from my mind, or I don't remember it. But if you can come up with an example of it, please let me know. I will issue a retraction and explain it all. Whiteside was back, so it was interesting to see what they did with James Johnson and Will Reed. Willie Reid played 17 minutes. He had 4 points, 10 rebounds, a steal and a block. His minutes are going to be tied to Hassan Whiteside's. So if Whiteside plays 28 minutes, you might see a little bit more of Reid. If Whiteside plays 35, you'll see less of Reid. So yeah, Reid played well in 2 of those 3 games that Whiteside was out, and he did well. He had 10 boards, a steal and a block. He's really useful. And he does have 16 team value. But he's not going to come out there and play alongside Hassan. He's not going to come out here in a 25-minute role and be a 12-team league guy. Jimmy Johnson will, though, because he will continue to play at other positions. Now, he did go down to 27 minutes, which is ridiculous. Derek Williams does not deserve 21 minutes over James Johnson. Eric Spoelstra, work it out. 12, 6, and 3 for Jim. A steal, a block, and 2 triples. So it doesn't matter that he went to 27 minutes. The numbers are still ridiculous. Own him. Tyler Johnson played 33, 12 and 7 and a triple one. Own him. Joshy Richardson, his MRI has come back negative. He's got a foot sprain. Spoelstra doesn't believe he will miss very much time with this, so that's good news. So I'm holding Richardson where I own him until we hear more information, if we hear more information. They started Scooter Magruder and Wayne Ellington along with Derek Williams, and all 3 of those were really terrible. There's no reason to own any of those in 12s, probably even 14-team leagues. While Goran Dragic went 24, 5, and 5 in the in the smashing that they copped against the Clippers, which was 98-86. Chris Paul was fantastic. 19, 6, and 18 assists, 2 steals, 1 turnover. Just a ludicrous line in just 29 minutes, while DeAndre Jordan had 7 and 18 in his 34 minutes. Austin Rivers was out sick, so Ray Felton started in his place. He did his best to look like Austin Rivers. He went 3 of 11 from the field, 7, 7, and 5 with 2 steals and 37 minutes for Felton. No point in him in standards or probably even 14-team leagues, whereas Rivers does have that back-end value. JJ Redick had 25 points on 19 shots, while Jamal Crawford had 2 points on 1 of 12 shots. Yesterday, talking about them in DFS, they were same price, similar averages, same numbers, and it was like I just take a pick on one of them. I said if I'm picking one, I'd take Redick. 50-50 call, and I ended up getting it right. It's not going to happen next time, but that is, I have a lot more faith in Redick as a player than I do as Jamal Crawford. Interesting to see how many 6th Man of the Year votes Jamal Crawford gets this year. If he gets more than 1, that person needs that vote taken off them. The next game, the Houston Rockets, the Toronto Raptors. Talked about Jimmy Harden already. The Raptors, the Rockets made another change to their starting lineup. They put Nene back in as the starter and moved the table Montrezl Harrell to the bench. Doesn't matter, because Nene, outside of that one weird game the other day, just won't play minutes. He played 13 here and had 8 and 2. The table played 26 and was ridiculous. He went 12 of 13 from the field. In fact, hitting his first 12 shots, had 28 points with 5 rebounds and 1 block, and his ownership percentage sitting at 35 is ridiculous, and it needs to be higher. Trevor Ariza was great, 17, 7, and 3 with 5 triples, while Eric Gordon wasn't quite there with his 3, going just 1 of 9 in the 129-122 victory. He still had 19 points, though. Sammy Dekker has dropped off after a pretty nice start to the season, when Ryan Anderson is as up and down as they come. 9 and 4. No other numbers to really talk about, and 2 of 8 shooting, and that is the peril of owning Ryan Anderson. But if you own him, you are well aware of that. On the Raptors, we've talked Carroll already. Kyle Lowry, not a great night. Only took 7 shots. He went 2 of 7. But as I said the other day, I like a Kyle Lowry line that's not reliant on huge percentages. He had 12 points, but 5 boards, 6 assists, 4 steals. Still getting it done. But just be aware, this is a couple of games here in a row where the shooting has dropped off. So those numbers that were putting him in the top 10, they're not going to continue. DeRozan was great. He had 36, 6, and 5 on 13 of 21 shooting and a perfect 10 of 10 from the line. So a huge DeMar DeRozan night. And this is something I talked about yesterday as well, as I worried about the big men in a matchup with the Rockets with pick and rolls from the table and James Harden, and that limited what they can do. They changed the starting lineup. They put Norm Powell in over Bebe, and it actually worked okay. Not that Powell played fantastically. He had 10 points in 22 minutes with 2 triples and 3 assists, but Carroll played much better as a power forward, and I could see them sticking with this starting lineup. Still don't understand the complete hesitance to play Patrick Patterson as a starter. Just seems like a stubborn old habit, but that is what it is. Bebe played 13 minutes, 4 and 4 with a steal and a block. Valanciunas played 23 and went 8 and 5 with a block on perfect 4 and 4 shooting. But Casey just refuses to play them in these pick and roll type situations. As for Powell, It's encouraging. We don't know if it will stick. In 22 minutes, he's not a 12-team league guy, though. He's a guy you'd look at in 16-teamers, but it definitely is an encouraging sign to see him get that playing time. 22 minutes for Pat in his return, 8 and 7 with a couple of threes. He's just going to reclaim whatever value he had before that injury, which is 14, 16, probably 16-team leagues more accurately for Patrick Patterson. Utah and Memphis said this was going to be a horrible game from a fantasy outpoint point of view. It was. Gordy Hayward had 22 points in the 79-88 loss, which is just, look at the last game, it was 129-122, and this one 79-88. We're talking 50-40 less points there. In total, we're talking more than that. I can't do maths in my head at the moment. We're looking at 70 points difference. Just ridiculously different. George Hill played the game, didn't get hurt. 33 minutes, that's a win. 15-4-2 with a steal and a block. While Derek Favors on a back-to-back didn't play that well, and by that well I mean he was pretty bad, but the fact that he actually got 25 minutes is somewhat encouraging after a big game the night before. He is almost back to full health, 4-3-1 for Favors, while Rod Hood, man, he's just horrible at the moment, 4-14, 9-3-2. If you want to move on from Rod Hood, absolutely no problem whatsoever. I still do think that his potential is there, and I am still holding him, but shit, he has been bad for weeks now. And could have a real strong February and end of January to round things out, but he has been bad. Rudy Gobert only had the 5 points. I do think that Rudy's offense is going to drop with Favors back. We've seen that a little bit already, and I do think it will continue. 13 boards for Gobert, 3 steals, and a block in that performance. Joey Ingles also limited to just 17 minutes in this one. Not a great Joe Ingles night. For the Grizzlies, Zachy Randolph, another 27 minutes there, 13 and 11, and gets it done with 3 steals and 2 blocks. If you know one thing about Zach Randolph, it's that you should never rely on defensive statistics for him. Yes, he can put up double-doubles, but those sort of numbers are quite fluky, those defensive numbers. I still don't think that he is a must-own 12-team leaguer, despite 2 strong games in a row. JaMychal Green played 32, so he went up from the 20 that he played against Golden State. Didn't make him good, though, 8 and 6 with a 1-1, which is nice. He's a 14-teamer. And we're seeing Chandler Parsons. We're seeing good Chandler Parsons. We're seeing signs of life Chandler Parsons. We're seeing Chandler Parsons, not the one that we saw that looked like he literally had no idea how to play basketball. The last 2 games, it's been, all right, this is Chandler Parsons. This is 15 minutes Chandler Parsons, but this is Chandler Parsons. I've probably said Chandler Parsons too many times there, but 16 minutes, 9 points, a couple of threes, 3 or 4 shooting. It gives you encouragement that when the minutes restriction's off, that he is going to come back and be a top 50 guy. That's the encouragement I get. The discouragement I get is I don't know when that's going to happen. It could be March for all we know. Could be next week. But I would think that we're looking at almost all-star break at this point for the restrictions to be lifted, which is a massive pain in the ass. So holding on to him is quite a tough chore. Tone Allen only played the 23 in this one, 2 and 5 with a steal. If you own Tone Allen, I think you just keep holding just for the time being. Conley had 12, 2 and 9, and Marc Gasol went 17 and 4 with 3 steals, but both of those guys didn't shoot the ball all that well. Cleveland and Phoenix. Kyrie, Love, LeBron all scored over 20. Kyrie had 27, 2 and 7. LeBron went 28, 8 and 4. Kevin Love went 25 and 10 with 3 triples. Big numbers from all those guys. And as usual, not a lot else happening in other areas. It was a high-scoring game. The Suns kept it real close, and the Cavs just got the victory 120 to 116. But the performance of DeAndre Liggins was good. He had 7 points in 25 minutes actually, had 4 steals and 2 blocks, and that's where his value has been. When Kyle Korver arrives, which looks like it's going to be Tuesday, although Mike Dunleavy refusing to report to Atlanta because he wants a buyout, and I will reiterate this, and I will go on a rant at some point this year, buyouts are the biggest load of shit in the NBA. Well, maybe not the biggest because there's quite a few, but buyouts are a joke, they are ridiculous, and they should not exist anywhere. They are an absolute load of shit. They are just ridiculous. Should never exist. So Dunleavy refusing to report because he wants a buyout, and Atlanta's going, nah, we'll probably just keep you. So that's holding things up on the Korver end, because he needs to report to have a physical to make the trade official. Anyway, when Korver finally does arrive in Cleveland, Liggins is not playing 25 minutes a night. Iman Shumpert's not playing 26. Korver's also probably not playing 26, but those guys are going to lose any of that value they had. Now, Shumpert had 10 and 3 here with a pair of blocks and a pair of threes, which is useful, but it's 14, it's 16 team league maybe, or that's where it's going to be heading anyway, while Channing Frye dropped in 10 points in his 18 minutes. For the Suns, Devin Booker played 45 minutes, and the best thing about it, he was 50% from the field. 28 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals and 2 threes. And recently, his shooting has been much better over the last few games. He's really getting it going. Now, do we have trust that he can continue to do it for the season? Well, everything we've seen says no, but I'm really encouraged by what we've seen from Booker recently. TJ Warren was very limited in the first half because got to give minutes to your boys. That's the Earl Watson rule. Got me a job, you have to play. So PJ Tucker and Tyson Chandler, they're always going to play minutes. But Warren saw 27. He looked better in the second half. He went 7 of 9 from the field for 15 points with 3 rebounds and 3 steals. And he has to be owned. He has to be owned in every league. There's so much talk of him being dropped. If he's dropped in my league, I'm grabbing him. It's as simple as that. PJ Tucker had 10 points. He had 2 steals in 28 minutes with 4 boards, while Tyson Chandler had an empty 10 and 15 double-double with nothing else really happening. He's more a 12-teamer. I love that Marquise Chris played 33 minutes, and that's 2 out of the last 3 games for Chris to play 30 minutes or above. He had 12, 3, and 4. He blocked 3 shots. He hit a 3, and he went 4 of 11 from the field, which is obviously not ideal, and took some pretty horrendous type of shots. But still, that's impressive, and that puts him firmly on the watch list, and it makes him probably a 16-team league sort of grab guy for now as a preemptive sort of thing. Brandon Knight, after 3 games in a row of 7 minutes, a game missing for a wrist injury, comes back and plays 27, and then goes down to 14. So I think that we can look at Knight and say the 14 minutes is the likelihood for you moving forward. Unfortunately, Alex Len, just the 6 minutes, 2 points with a block. I just don't think he's going to get enough playing time this year to be a 12-team league guy really at all. The rescheduled Detroit and Portland game went to double overtime. You know what you always hear? It's free basketball. The fans get free basketball. And I was thinking about that today. And it's great for neutrals. It's great for people watching at home. They get free basketball. If I'm a Blazers fan, if I'm a Pistons fan, I don't think I want overtime. I just want to win. So I understand that it's a way of preserving a victory, but I don't. If I'm sitting there and they hit the shot to tie it, like if I'm a Pistons fan sitting there watching and McCollum hits the shot to go into overtime or the shot to go into double overtime, I don't sit there and go, yes, free basketball. I go, you bastard, how dare you hit it? I want to win. So I don't think the fans in the crowd are going, they're going, yes, we're still alive because they're Portland fans. But if it was the other way around and it was in Detroit, they wouldn't be going, oh, but at least we got free basketball. I feel like it's a real neutral thing to say. And that was just something that caught my attention today. Another off-topic rant. The Pistons did end up getting the victory 125-124 on a KCP late shot to get them the 1-point lead. Andre Drummond proved a truth in fantasy basketball this year. If you're a big man and you play Portland, your numbers are going to be great. 28 and 14 for Drummond in 52 minutes, 4 steals and 2 blocks. Ridiculous numbers. KCP went 26 and 4 with 4 triples and 4 steals, while Reggie Jackson had 31 with a pair of threes and a pair of steals. So big nights from them. Johnny Lua lasted just 6 minutes due to right knee soreness, so that meant that we had to get more Toby Harris, who played 38 minutes and went 14 and 9. And if Lua has to miss, Harris will probably start. And Marcus Morris. This is why I don't like Marcus Morris as a fantasy player. 46 minutes for 10 points. 5 rebounds, 5 assists on 5 of 17 shooting. He played like 37 minutes a night last year, and it enabled him to be the 140th ranked player. He needs a shit ton of minutes to be even barely useful in 12-team leagues, and I reckon you can do better in the majority of situations. Aaron Baines returned. He played 6 minutes and had 2 points. So we saw Boban come in just for the final 1 second to be a member in Stan Van Gundy's wall. And that should give you... And Van Gundy did say beforehand, oh yeah, Boban played well, we might have to find minutes. They're not finding minutes for him. He'll be just a spot type of guy. For the Blazers, Alan Crabb. This is the sort of line that makes me want to look at the waiver wire from Alan Crabb. Because someone will add him in a 12-team league. Because you know why? He had 30 points and he had 5 triples. But people won't look that he had 1 rebound, 1 assist, and it came on 80% shooting, 12 of 15. So the reason I want to look is because some numbnuts will go out there and grab him and drop someone valuable. Now, I'm not saying you're a numbnuts for adding Alan Crabb. I'm saying there will be some dickhead out there who adds him and drops someone that's actually valuable, like TJ Warren. This is a good game from Crabb. Absolutely no problem admitting that. It's a career-high night on ludicrous shooting with no other contributions, and that is Alan Crabb. So when the shot doesn't fall and he's at 40% and he goes 6 of 15, he ends up with 12 points and 1 rebound and 1 assist, and you look at that and go, well, that's terrible. What do I want to do with that? Nothing. So grab him in a deeper league, maybe. Fine. But watch if someone else grabs him, and then have a look who they dropped. CJ McCollum had 35, 3 and 6, just apparently can't miss anymore, and this is a consistent effort from him. He has been ridiculous. And Al-Farouq Aminu, he had 7 of 10, but I'm not too worried about, he's not going to shoot like that, as we know. But 8 boards, 2 assists, a block, a 3, 16 points, 37 minutes is what's important for me for Aminu. He is playing big minutes every game, and he, I do believe, is a 12-team league guy. Mason Plumlee just missed the triple-double, 8, 10, and 12 with 3 blocks, while Lillard went 20, 9, and 5. And Mo Harkless had a real turd of a game, 5 and 2 in 26 minutes with a block. His numbers have been muted with Al-Farouq Aminu jumping up a little bit. I still do think that Harkless is a 12-teamer, but it might not remain that way for long. Let's get into the Golden State Warriors and the Sacramento Kings. More of the same from the Warriors. 28, 7, and 6 for Durant with 4 blocks. He is on 64 blocks this season. He had a career high last year of 85. So he is almost there already in half a season. He has taken that up tremendously this year. Steph was also great. 34 and 6, 2 steals and 5 triples, while Draymond had a very Draymond night. 9, 7, and 10 with 2 steals and 2 blocks. Klay Thompson wasn't awesome. He was 8 of 19 for 18 points. And Zaza Pachulia is someone we need to sort of pay attention to. Probably not a 12-teamer, but 10, 7, and 2, 3 steals, 22 minutes. And over the last couple of weeks, he's a top 150 player, which means in 14-team leagues, I want to go and have a look at Zaza, whereas earlier in the season, I wouldn't have said that would have been the way to go. For the Kings, they made another change to their starting lineup, moving Matty Barnes and Ty Lawson out and putting Anthony Tolliver and Garrett Temple in. And they started off the game on fire, really, really killing the Warriors. A horrific fourth quarter saw them lose 117 to 106. Third quarter, sorry, not fourth quarter, saw them get smashed, but it was encouraging for this starting lineup. And there is I think it does stick, this starting lineup. So what that does to me is it really limits what Darren Collison can do and Ty Lawson can do, because they want to play them, but if they're not going to play them together, it's going to limit them. So Collison played 30 and Lawson played 22. Collison had 14 points with 3 steals. Lawson had 15, 2, and 3. Puts them to be guys that you can own in 12s, but they're going to be your 12th or 13th best player. As for Tolliver, he had 16 and 5 with 3 triples. Jumps up into 14 or 16 team conversation. Rudy Gay had 23, and he had a Richie Beno.
2 for 2.
DeMarcus Cousins went 17, 10 and 5, and he had 2 steals and 2 blocks as well, while Garrett Temple played 42 minutes. He had 14 points, 2 threes, a steal and a block. Not a 12-team league guy. 14 to 16 team leagues for him. Barnesy obviously now has absolutely no business being in a fantasy roster that's in a league shallower than 16-team leagues. Let's wrap up the games from Sunday with Orlando and the Lakers. And for the second game in a row, Frank Vogel playing big minutes to DJ Augustine. I don't know why, because he wasn't good. He had 6, 5, and 8 in 28 minutes on 1 of 6 shooting, whereas Lord Alfred Payton had 9, 6, and 4 in 19 minutes. Now, Payton shot poorly, 4 of 11. Better than Augustin, though. So I'm not really understanding what the change is there. There was a real confidence happening with Payton and Vogel, and he was playing in big minutes every night. Moved into starters. Oh, man, maybe he's following the Nets. Oh, we've got to play our backup more than our starting point guard. That's the way shit runs. You know what, Frank? The Nets are the worst team in the NBA. Probably don't follow their lead. Probably not a good idea. Bismack Biyombo had a double-double. This is his first big game, and it feels like forever. 10 and 11 in 26 minutes. Forget him. Serge Ibaka, 19 and 10 in 38 minutes. While Nick Vucevic, only the 26 minutes. That's criminal. 19, 7 and 4. A 3, a steal, 2 blocks. Still a ludicrously good night, while Evan Fournier went 19, 5 and 3 with a pair of steals and a pair of 3-pointers. Unfortunately, the Magic couldn't get the win as the Lakers beat them 111 to 95. Jeff Green remains horrible, 6 points in 24 minutes For the Lakers, talked about D'Angelo Russell, also mentioned Tim Mozgov, who played 30 minutes, hit all 7 of his shots, and went 15-9. If he's getting 30 minutes a night, he is a 12-team league guy. I just do not trust that will happen. But this is twice out of the last 3 or 4 games that Mozgov has actually played 30 minutes, and maybe Walton is leaning towards that. Gotta love what Julius Randle's doing. I love it. 19, 9, and 5, a 111. Been fantastic recently, and I always give credit as due, and I'll always admit when I was wrong on a player, and I'm leaning towards saying that I was wrong on Randle. He had that little dip after he came back from that hip problem, and he still has times where I look at him and go, what the hell are you doing? Like, what on earth are you doing? And I look at him and go, how a player's not knowing that he's going left every single time? But he's still playing well. Brandon Ingram's also now scored 17 points in consecutive games, and that's going to get people fairly erect. They're going to look at it and say, oh man, Brandon Ingram, man, number 2 player in the draft, he's a stud. He's had 17 in 2 consecutive games. I look at it and go, yeah, he took 9 shots and hit 6 of them. The man's shooting like 34% from the season and 25% from 3. Probably don't expect him to shoot 67%. He's not getting involved in the offense that much. He's not doing much in the other areas. I still don't look at it and go, sure, let's grab him because he's the number 2 player in the league. Look, he might have a stretch. I reckon it probably comes late March to April where he maybe puts up top 100 numbers. I just don't really feel it at the moment. Uncle P, terrible. 2 points on 1 of 7 shooting, and to be honest, we're seeing a regression from Nick Young over the last few games, as with Lou Will, who was 3 of 12 for 10 points in 17 minutes. And that's great because I would rather the Lakers play their players who are actually young and can develop. The Lakers are like the 2nd worst team in the NBA or 3rd worst team, and we don't need to get fluky wins on the back of Nick Young or Lou Williams. Jordy Clarkson played 29 minutes, 9, 4, and 4. That just about does it for, well, not that just about does it, that does do it for the end of the review for Sunday. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back to look at a very, very small 3-game Monday.
2 for 222.
Here we are, guys. Let's look at the perfect lineups on FanDuel for DFS. Brogo had 34.7, while Chrissy Paul went 56.2. Jim Harden at 66.5 and Devin Booker at 42. The small forwards, Bob Cove at 39.7 and Damari Carroll at 36.6. Power forwards, Jabari Parker 52.1, Markieff at 36.5, and at centre, Andre Drummond 55.8. I reckon you could have very, very easily made that perfect lineup. So I talked about a lot of those. I think I talked about all of those guys yesterday. You could very easily have put that together. That's 420.1 points at 59,500. On DraftKings, they didn't do the full 9 games. This is the main slate, the last 4 games of the night. Eric Bledsoe at 52, Devin Booker 44.25, Durant at 56.25, Zach Randolph at 38.75, Kevin Love 43.5, D'Angelo Russell 45.5, Marquise Chris at 29.75, and Big Tim Mozgov at 31.25. That gave you 341.25 for a total of 49,600. For you guys that are watching on the video, you can see that I am wearing a t-shirt, and every time I'm looking at myself, I don't have my tits out and showing everyone my bare chest. Of course, I'm wearing a t-shirt, but I am wearing the Sega Strong t-shirt, which was a gift from my brother for Christmas. So thank you, Jordan. Thank you for the t-shirt. But I look at it as I come back and look at the screen. I see it and I go, "What the hell is going on?" And I still don't Cause you see like the fake tie printed on there, like a jacket, and it's a t-shirt. And I'm looking at it, going, It doesn't look like me. It's very, very weird. It's very, very off-putting. So if you're just listening on the podcast, just go to YouTube and have a look, and just have a look how oddly weird I look in this t-shirt. It is throwing me off in a big way. Let's talk DFS. There are 3 games. Now, it's not a good day for DFS. So if there's a day you're going to limit your volume, this is it. It is not a good day. There are no great value plays. There are 3 games on. In a lineup, it's going to be hard, I reckon, to roster some of the big names. There are quite a few on. Anthony Davis, Russ Westbrook, Karl Anthony Towns, Jim Butler. Yeah, there's some expensive players on. But the reason it can be hard to roster multiple ones of them is because to get those guys in, you need to get some good value cheap players. And there's just none of them. So going an even balanced lineup might be the way to go on a slate like this, because there's just no... Well, in a GPP, it's a different story, but in a cash lineup, there's just no... this guy is cheap and this guy's going to be able to meet value pretty comfortably. There's just none of that happening. So, cash lineups, if you do that, are going to feel very much like GPP, high upside, low floor lineups, which is not a great way to go for cash. So if you can't form a good lineup, just remember, on a shit day like this, limit your exposure, limit your bankroll on a day like this. Play less. If you normally have a 10% rule that you play 7%. Go a bit lower. That's what I'll be looking at on this one. Also, a shout out to everyone playing DFS in Australia. You don't play enough double ups. Everyone wants to play the GPPs, everyone wants to play the big tournaments. Play the double ups. Not enough people play them. It is the easiest way to make money on these sites. You can I reckon on DraftStars, I'll have to have a look at this. I reckon I've cashed in the double ups 12 days in a row. And from what I put in at the start of the season, I am at about 700% return on investment from cash games. Play the double ups. Everyone is just wanting, and maybe this is the case over in the States as well, and I believe it is, that more people go in the GPPs. But if you're going to be serious about playing DFS, play the double ups. Get the numbers of, because the DraftStars double ups, there's not that many people that play in them. We need to get the numbers up on them, but play them. There's money to be made there, and that is the best way of building your bankroll. And if you get a cheeky tournament one in there, do it. Like when I play each day, 10% of my budget goes to the tournament, 90% of it goes in the cash games, and it wins nearly every day. And it's a great way of just consistently building your bankroll up. And as I said, I put in money on DraftStars, I believe, in the start of December, 700% in a month, in 6 weeks, just from cash. And again, 90% cash, 10% GPPs, and have not had a big GPP win at all. Haven't won a tournament on there. Haven't finished second. I believe the highest I finished was 12th. So that's something we do need to have a look at on the Australian sites. Really look at the double ups, and that's a great way of making some money. Let's talk New Orleans and the New York Knicks. The Knicks are favoured by 4, and the total is 215.5 points there. Thankfully, we don't really have much, or in terms of these games, there's no real injuries to talk about at all, which is great news. Derrick Rose at 6,200 is one of the point guards that is playing, and I'm sure you are aware of that Derrick Rose is the point guard for the New York Knicks. He is at 6,200, and with such a lack of value on the site, he's actually not a bad play. I reckon if you're looking for 5x value on this slate, it's going to be tough to find it, to be honest. I think you'll see cash scores fairly low. So don't look at it going, you probably won't get 5x. It's just going to be hard to find that. Now, Rose is only averaging 23 over the last 3, but this is a great matchup. Point guards do get a significant boost against New Orleans, so I think he is one of those guys. If you're going middle of the pack, balanced lineup, he is great. 5,800 on DraftKings, even better, where he's averaging 29 over the last 5. Gets a bump, 5,800. Absolutely love it. Drew Holiday's another guy you can look at, 6,900 over on FanDuel, and if you look at him on DraftKings, he's at 66. The same story. Probably not quite as good a value as Rose because he's a little bit more expensive, but still, you should be able to get 30 plus out of him. It is a marginally negative matchup for Holiday against Rose. Now, the Knicks aren't as bad as they were previously, but in terms of what Holiday brings, it doesn't quite suit him. It's not a massive negative, but it's something. But still, there is value in Drew Holiday in this matchup. Brandon Jennings at 4,100. I'd probably leave him as a GPP sort of a player. In the last 5 games, he's had a 49-point game. He's had a 0.7 game. So there's quite a bit of fluctuation there. And in fact, he's only averaging 10 points over the last 3, but we saw him get over a point per minute in the last game and played 23 minutes. So that's a little bit of a step up after the previous 2. He had struggled significantly. He's a GPP point guard tournament option. Shooting guards, Courtney Lee here at 4,100. I really like Courtney Lee in cash, and it's not something I say often about Courtney Lee, but he's at 4,100 on DraftKings and on FanDuel. I think you look at Courtney Lee and say, bang, here's 21 points. Let's lock it in. That is as consistent as it gets. What's his upside? 24 points? Look, it's not big. There's no real GPP value in him, but he's got a pretty solid floor. You know he's going to get 30, 33 minutes. He's the number one player in three-point percentage in the NBA, so he is relied upon with this team. You have to just think you're getting 20 points out of Courtney Lee. Lock it in. Build the rest of your lineup around that. Buddy Hield crashed back to reality, I guess, with just 24 minutes and 16 points in the last game. He's at 4,100 on FanDuel and 44 on DraftKings. He's a bit of an upside play. He's a GPP guy. Don't love him in cash. Each-one more. Langston Galloway's at 3,700 and he's at 3,000 on DraftKings. I love him at 3,000 on DraftKings, but probably lean a little bit more GPP. And I'd say I don't like him quite as much on FanDuel at 37, but dropped 26 in the last game and 26 points at 3,700. I will definitely not turn that away. So he's got decent value. Justin Holiday, weirdly, basically out of the rotation, which again is odd. Mallow is at 7,900 on FanDuel. He's 7,200 on DraftKings. I like him on both sides. He's averaging 47 in the last three on DraftKings, which at 7,200, you get me that, then you're set. And it's a little bit more expensive with a little bit lower scoring on FanDuel, but I still do think on this weird slate that he is going to be a guy that you can plug in, especially if you don't want to spend close to $10,000 on Jim Butler, which is what you're going to have to spend. The other small forwards, Lance Thomas, Solomon Hill, Mindaugas, Kuzminskas, Dante Cunningham, not much to like there, but Kuzminskas at 3,600 on FanDuel, and he's at 3,100 on DraftKings. He's absolutely worth a look in a GPP, but even if you look at him in cash, he's averaging 19 over the last three. Now, I don't have full confidence that he's going to get enough minutes to do that, but he's been better, or he's been very good actually over the last couple of games, and 3,100, if you decide to go that superstars route, he could be that guy that you go, all right, he's 3,100. Maybe I can make this work in cash because you don't need a huge amount to return value at that low price tag. Power forwards, Donatas Motiejunas is at 3,800 on FanDuel and he is rock bottom 3,000 on DraftKings. It's very hard to go past that. He's played one game this year. He had 20 minutes and had 26 points. At $3,000, please sign me up for that. He had 25 points on FanDuel. Again, great value. And I said that there wasn't many low price value guys. He is absolutely one of them. So if you are going big, he is in. For high price guys, he is in, especially on DraftKings at 3,000. That is tremendous. And you would have to feel, and I do feel that, given how well he played in his first game at 20 minutes, that he pushes and gets an extra one or two here. And at that low price, it's going to be really hard not to actually go past that value. So I do really like him. As for his opponent, he's at 7,800. I feel pretty good about getting 35 out of Kristaps. I think you should too. So there's a lot of value in him there. Now it's 7,400 on DraftKings. Yep, I do like it. This is the game I think to attack for DFS purposes. It's the highest over-under at 215.5 by a considerable margin. The next one is 207.5. So this is the one that if you're going to stack in a GPP, it's this one. Rose, Anthony, Holiday, Davis, Porzingis, Motiejunas, Noah, lots of guys that you can stack in a GPP. This is the one to attack, I believe. Now, as for Anthony Davis, he's at 11,100. Chuck him in with those high-price guys that I talked about. He had 58 in the last game. He's averaging 52 across the last three. I like that. He's 11,100 on both sides. I think it's a little bit better value for him over on FanDuel. But again, if you can't find the right cheap guys, really watch that in cash. Because it might be tough. Now, pairing him with Motiejunas might be the way to go. But you might need some other cheapy guys to throw in a Russ or a Butler or one of those other high-priced players. So have a look to see exactly how it fits in. Terrence Jones with Motiejunas on board, no thanks. Now at centre, we don't know what Jeff Hornacek's going to do. But the last two games, he's limited Joakim Noah to like 20 minutes. So according to Hornacek logic, that means that he's probably in line for 28 here. 4,900. He'd been crushing value basically every game until Hornacek said, oh, that's enough of that. You're probably going to need to cut back on those minutes. That makes him a GPP guy to me. It is going to be tough in cash to look at him because, what if he has 15 points, which he did in the last one? That's not working out. But in a GPP, there's 30-point upside at 4,900, 32, 33, 40 points even if he has a big night. but it all depends on what Hornacek decides to do with the minutes. And that puts Kylo Quinn, it puts Billy Hernangomez in the same boat. They're both very limited price, $4,000 for O'Quinn, $3,500 for Hernangomez, and Hernangomez's minimum on DraftKings as well at $3,000. But you can strictly look at them in GPPs. There's nothing else to really say or consider with those players on in cash games. Next up, we look at the ugliest game on the slate, Dallas Mavericks and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now my screen has disappeared, which is always awesome when that happens. Don't you just love that? It hasn't on the DraftKings screen, so we can continue to look at that one. The Timberwolves are favored by 5 points, and the total is a putrid 196 points. And with 3 games on, that is obviously very, very far from ideal. How do we approach this? It doesn't mean there's no value in this game, because again, there's only 3 on, so you're going to have to look at this game and you're going to have to say, all right, well, I might have to attack some of these players out of this contest. But far from it being the best one to attack at point guard. Let's look at Rick Rubio. He's at $5,400 over on DraftKings. That's a $400 price rise, so it's a significant rise, and his numbers haven't been terrible, but they haven't been awesome. He's averaging just 23 over the last 5, but I think that he's in an okay spot here. It's somewhat of a negative matchup, but I would rather take a guy like Derrick Rose at $400 more expensive than Rubio, given the way that they're both priced and the matchups and the way that they're currently playing. Not that Rose is playing great, but Rubio's playing probably the same as him, but the matchup doesn't really suit him. If we look at Rubio on FanDuel, he's at $5,600. The same sort of story. Maybe you have a look at him, but I don't even think his GPP upside is really that high. Darren Williams is $59 on FanDuel. Really don't like that either. That's, do you want 30 out of Darren Williams? Yeah, I do. Will I get it? Probably not. So that doesn't really work for me either. And he's at 56 on DraftKings. Really not appealing at all. JJ Barea's back, but likely going to be limited to 20 minutes or so. So I really can't see spending $5,200 on JJ here. Chris Dunn, Devin Harris, none of those guys are appealing. Shooting guard, Zach LaVine is, though. He's at $6,400. He's a really good GPP target. I don't like him as much as a cash guy, but on FanDuel at 67, on DraftKings at 67, I actually like him a little bit more, and I think that he can be used in a cash situation over on DraftKings. Now, the matchup is not a negative for him in this matchup. It is a slight positive boost, which is good news. And I hate the fact that the salary has risen by $600, but I still do think that there is some value for Zachy over there. Wes Matthews is priced at $5,200 on FanDuel, $49 on DraftKings. Really dislike it on FanDuel. Has not been getting anywhere near that, averaging just 21 over the last 5. But on DraftKings, a little bit better, $4,900. We know the 3-point bonus you get on DraftKings. We know Wes Matthews' strength is 3-pointers. So I think that he is not a terrible cash play, but really a better GPP option. Any other shooting guards? There's Seth Curry, but he's not going to be worth looking at. Wigo at $6,400. Are we going to get high-scoring Wigo? Are we going to get putrid Wigo? Which one are we going to get? The matchup here is a marginal negative. He's up and down. He really just lends himself to GPPs at this point, to tournaments. $6,500 on DraftKings, I would say the same thing. I'd have a little bit more confidence with him on DraftKings because I just think that the scoring suits him a little bit better, but it's still not... I'm not teaming with confidence with Andrew Wiggins at this point, but I could totally understand using him. As for the pencil, I feel pretty confident with him. He's at $6,700 and he's averaging 35 over the last 3. I think that it is a marginal negative in the matchup, but I think that if you're going that balanced lineup in a cash game, I feel pretty good about getting 30 points out of Harrison Barnes. In fact, on DraftKings, his lowest score over the last 5 is 31 points. Like, that's as safe a floor as you can get. His lowest score on FanDuel's 30 points. A really safe floor, which is really what you need in cash game play. So that's what the pencil looks at there. Shabazz Muhammad, Dorian Finney-Smith, Justin Anderson, no thanks. Gorgie Jang, this is a real rock solid one to me as well. $5,500 for Gorgie, averaging 29 over the last 5, 30 over the last 3. He's at 57 on DraftKings. That's higher than FanDuel, but don't care. I feel like you can get him and say, we're getting 30 points here. That's great. He's got tournament upside and he's got cash game stability. Really a guy to build lineups around, I believe. Dirk at 5,200 on FanDuel. It doesn't work for me that well. I much prefer the 5,200 for him on DraftKings. He's not a horrible play on FanDuel by any means. He played 30 minutes in the last game, so there's a real chance he gets 25 points. But on DraftKings, we know that the scoring will suit him a little bit better. So I do think that he is a solid, cheap power forward option that you can have a look at, or he's a center option as well on DraftKings. So he is definitely in play. Do I power Nemanja Bjelica? No thanks. Carl Towns at 9,200. Put him in that group of expensive players. 9,200 is a fair chunk. It's a good matchup for him though. He's a real chance to go for 50 here. I like him in cash. I like him in GPPs as well. So he is one of those high-price center or high-price player options that I would feel pretty good about. Again, it really depends on how else you can fill out the lineup. Andrew Bogut, Cole Aldridge, Salah Mejri, none of those guys are really doing it for me at all. Let's talk the last game of the night, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls are favored by 2, and the total is 207.5 points. Let's look at the point guards. Michael Carter-Williams, there's no cheap point guards that are any good on this slate. Carter-Williams is at 4,800. Do we get 28-minute Michael Carter-Williams or do we get 17-minute Michael Carter-Williams? That is why we have no ability to trust him in cash, and I would look at him as a GPP play only. And again, why it makes it hard to use these expensive guys, because there's no way to get good value, cheap players at most positions in cash. Because the Bulls could easily run Jim Butler at point guard, and they did it massive chunks of last game, and it worked. So I don't see why they don't go back to it. So yeah, he's a very risky play, but given there's just no other cheap point guards out there, if you're going for one, he's pretty much going to be it. You could also go for his backup, Jaren Grant, who played more minutes than Carter-Williams in the last game at 3,600, but he put up 16 points. Like, it wasn't a great performance from him. He is priced at where is he? He's priced at 3,100 on DraftKings, so that makes him a very interesting GPP play. But realistically, the cheap point guards they're not really very appealing at all. For Russell Westbrook, 12,400. Look, the clear standout play of the day. But as I said, how do you build your lineup around him? It really, if you can find a way in cash, sure. Yeah, great. Here's 60 points. Great matchup for him against the Bulls. Here's 60. But if that means that you're resulting in having Cam Payne as your point guard, maybe you want to reassess it. Payne's at $3,000 on DraftKings. Not totally writing him off, because I imagine his minutes go up and he could really have a big game against the Bulls. So that could work out for Cam. But of course, there's no way you can rely upon that in cash games whatsoever. Shooting guards, Vic Oladipo, love this, just fits into that mid-price range again. 5,900 for Vic, he's averaging 29 over the last 3, and you feel pretty good about him doing it again. Now, on DraftKings at 6,300, I'm not behind it at that price. Now, it is a good matchup for him. He does have a good record against the Bulls from his time in Orlando. Probably lean more GPP on DraftKings, but 59 on FanDuel really screams cash to me. Dwayne Wade had a monster in the last game at 35 points, but it meant he played 39 minutes, and he's at 6,600. That does not scream value in a matchup which is a negative for him. He is not someone that I'm all that interested in, and if we look at him on DraftKings, he's at 6,200, so it's a little bit cheaper, but it's still not a great play. Small forwards, Dougie McDermott, $4,000, had 31 in the last game. Now, fantasy points are not Doug's strong suit normally. He scores and he does not much else, but he did have double-digit rebounds in the last game, and the minutes are definitely trending up. No problem with using Doug McDermott at $4,000. On DraftKings, he's at 4,200. That's probably less appealing over on DraftKings at that salary, but still definitely has GPP upside if they run with that lineup that they ran with for almost the entire fourth quarter and overtime against Toronto. Andre Robertson, GPPs only. Jim Butler's at 9,600 on FanDuel. Jim Butler's at 93 on DraftKings. There's no other expensive small forward to look at. So if you're going that way, you have to look at him. And he's averaging 62 across the last 3, which is obviously fantastic. But who feels like that's sustainable and achievable? I don't. I think he can get you 50, and again, it all depends on how you fill out the rest of your roster. So he's in play. Absolutely he's in play. He's been playing fantastically, but he's playing so far above himself. Now, if they go big chunks, if we hear Hoiberg say, yeah, we're going to run him at point a lot, then absolutely, he becomes one of the better high-price guys on the entire slate. Jeremy Grant going up against his brother. He's terrible, so I don't think we need to worry too much about him. But the 3,100 for him on DraftKings is marginally appealing. But of course, let's look at it as a GPP only. Nick Mirotic, 4,500. He's rising. They played a lot of McDermott, Mirotic, and centre as the key lineup in the last game. I can see it happening again. Mirotic has got great ability to put up fantasy stats. The matchup is neutral, 4,500, 47 on DraftKings, absolutely fine. You just have the concern with him for cash games, and it probably steers me a little bit more towards GPPs, but on such a limited slate, we would be a GPP type guy that I would feel more comfortable about using in cash situations. Taj at 4,700 hasn't really been getting anything cracking apart from that game against Cleveland. Decent history against Oklahoma City, so I think he's okay without being spectacularly good. I like him a bit more at 4,600 on DraftKings, and Enes Kanter has been strong. The Bulls frontcourt shouldn't scare him whatsoever. If they go smaller with Mirotic McDermott, that might worry Enes a little bit, but he's been putting up big numbers in limited minutes. So he's definitely worth. He's got the best fantasy point per minute in this entire game outside of Russ and Jim Butler, which I think would surprise some people. 5,300 for Enes is fine to use. 5,000 on DraftKings, fine. And I actually feel like he's got some stability here in this one as well. At center, Robin Lopez, 4,200. I don't want to do that. 5,900 for Steve Adams. I do. He has been playing fantastically. The Bulls do give up numbers to opposition centers. Really like Steve Adams here. He's at 6,000 on DraftKings, so that's really testing me. That $300 price rise has put a cramp on it. I still think he's okay to use, though. I don't think he's a horrible play. Chris Felicio is a guy I'd look at. Minimum salary on both sites. I think that we saw him get big minutes before fouling out against Toronto. It's tilting in his favour, so he'd be a really, really interesting cheap centre play in GPPs. I think you should definitely look at him in that sort of a sense. Let's get to the picks of the day before we wrap this thing up. On FanDuel, Carter Williams at 48, Derrick Rose at 62, and Russ at 12.4. Shooting guards, Courtney Lee, 41, Oladipo, 59. Small forwards, Dougie Mack at 4,000, Carmelo at 79. I'm renaming Doug McDermott. I'm not happy with those nicknames. I'm just going to call him Macca. Macca at 4,000, Mallow at 7,900, and Jim Butler at 96. The power forwards, Nick Mirotic, 45, Jang at 55, and Tony Davis at 11.1. And the centers, Joakim Noah, 49, Steve Adams, 59, and Townsy at 9,200. On DraftKings, Langston Galloway, minimum 3,000, Derrick Rose, 58, and Russ at 13. Shooting guards, Courtney Lee, 41, Zach LaVine, 67, and Jimmy Butler, 93. At small forward, Nick Mirotic, 4,700, Mallow, 72. Power forwards, Taj at 46, Jeng at 57, Townsy at 87. And the centers, Donatas Motiejunas, 3,000, Dirk at 52, and Tony Davis, 11,100. Let's wrap it up with the Aussie sites now. Moneyball, Michael Carter Williams, 42, Drew Holiday, 63, and Russ at 12.3. Shooting guards, Courtney Lee, 4,000, Oladipo, 54. Small forwards, Macca's at 4,200, Mallow's at 79, and Jim Butler is at 9.9. Power forwards, Nick Mirotic, 44, Gorgie Jeng, 57, and Tony Davis, 10.5. And the centers, Joakim Noah, 46, Steve Adams, 58, and Karl Towns, 93. On Draft Stars, MCW, 6350, Derrick Rose, 11.1, and Russ Westbrook, 23.7. Shooting guards, Courtney Lee, 7.850, Zachary Levine, 11.750, and Jim Butler, 16.850. The small forwards, Macca's at 6,000, Nick Mirotic is at 9,000, and Mallow's at 14.750. The power forwards, Donatas Motiejunas, minimum 5,000. Jeng is 11,100, and Davis is 24.50. And at centre, Chris Felicio, 5,000. Dirk at 9,600, and Karl Anthony Towns, 17,500. We're done. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball. Thank you to SeatGeek. Use that promo code LOFantasy for $20 rebate off your first purchase. Check out Fantrax. Check out Basketball Monster, of course. And a big thank you to Dean Vasic, our Patreon sponsor for today. If you get a second, give me a Christmas present. Go leave a review on iTunes. It would be much appreciated. We are done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Joel Embiid.